The film starts by showing Lino, a skilled thief working in a workshop. He's busy installing NOS, nitrous oxide system, in a car, a system that can make the car go faster. With the modifications done, Lino picks up his younger brother, Quentin. Their plan is to rob a gold shop by crashing the car right into it. Before they carry out the heist, Lino hands Quentin a helmet. Quentin seems uncertain and wants to back out, but Lino insists he stays in the car. They're all set now. Lino activates the NOS, and the car plows through the shop, making its way out from the back. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse. The police arrive, foiling the robbery. Lino struggles to unbuckle his seatbelt and urges Quentin to escape. Quentin manages to run away, but Lino isn't so lucky. He's arrested and sent to prison. A few weeks later, Lino got a visit from Detective Cheras and a police leader named Moss. Cheras is in charge of the police's anti-drug team. He talked about how hard it is to catch drug dealers, so he asked Lino for help. They wanted Lino to make police cars faster, so they could catch the dealers more easily. At first, Lino didn't seem interested, but Cheras left a file with information about his team. Maybe that would change Lino's mind. A few months later, Cheras and his team, including Julia, were chasing after a drug dealer in a police car that Lino had modified. The drug dealer's cars were pretty advanced too, using NOS to speed away from the police. But then, out of nowhere, one of Cheras's team members, Areski, came driving from the opposite direction. He crashed his car into the drug dealer's car. It was a serious collision. Areski saw that the drug dealer didn't make it, and Marco, another member of Cheras's team, found a big bag full of drugs that were meant to be sold. Cheras acted quickly and disabled the NOS system in the drug dealer's car. Recently, Cheras and his team got back to their headquarters. Over there, Lino and Jeff were busy fixing up a car. Lino tried to talk to Julia, but she didn't seem interested. Meanwhile, Areski spoke with Cheras. He wanted the team to keep improving their performance when they chased down criminals. Areski was pretty proud of the team's success so far because of what he'd done. Lino then went up to Julia to chat, but she turned him down again. That clearly got on Lino's nerves, and he walked off looking a bit annoyed. He headed to the locker room. It turns out Lino still had a tracking device on his leg, a reminder that he was still sort of a prisoner. He asked Cheras if he could stay at the workshop that night to fix a car. The following day, Cheras picked up Lino from the workshop and drove him to a new garage. Inside, there were lots of fresh cars lined up neatly. Cheras handed Lino a letter saying he was released on parole. Lino was clearly happy about it, but his mood changed when Cheras showed him an NOS switch taken from a drug dealer's car. This switch was the same as the one in Lino's car from the gold store heist a few months back. Cheras had suspicions. He explained that the NOS switch linking the two incidents made him think Lino might be connected to the drug trade. Lino knew he had to come clean. He admitted that he did indeed break into the gold store alongside Quentin. He clarified that Quentin was just being used by the drug syndicate that the police were after. Upon hearing this, Cheras grew concerned for Quentin's safety. He asked Lino to join him in visiting a workshop near the port, which was suspected to be one of the drug traffickers' bases. When they arrived, Lino wasted no time and headed straight into the workshop. Cheras remained in the car, waiting for Areski to arrive. Inside the workshop, Quentin was really surprised when he saw Lino walk in. It didn't take long for two tough guys who seemed to run the place, Cad and Jacques, to show up and start attacking Lino. Luckily, Cheras stepped in and managed to stop them by taking away their weapons. A bit later, Areski and Marco arrived. Cheras told his buddies to arrest the thugs, and then he, Lino, and Quentin got into a car, getting ready to leave. While all this was happening, Jacques, who was handcuffed, whispered something to Marco. This made Areski look all worried, like some secret had slipped out. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Areski shot Cheras, who was in the car. Quentin told Lino to make a run for it. Lino started shooting at Areski and the others before bolting from the place. Marco tried to catch up but found a tracking device that belonged to Lino on the ground. Meanwhile, Areski, pretty frustrated with the chaos, asked Cad and Jacques to burn Cheris's car to get rid of any evidence. On the flip side, Lino dashed to a gas station, hoping to borrow a phone so he could call Julia. Unfortunately, his attempt hit a roadblock when 3 cops at the station nabbed him. At the same time, Quentin and the thugs carried out Oresky's orders, setting fire to Cheris and his car. While at the police station, Lino came face to face with a cop named Bruno. Bruno reached out to Cheris on Lino's behalf, but got no response from his colleague. Lino then asked Bruno to try reaching Julia instead. After a long wait in the interrogation room, Lino hoped Julia would show up. To his surprise, Oresky entered the room instead. Oresky tried to scare Lino by making up a story that blamed Lino for Cheris's death. Lino, who knew the truth, didn't buy into the lies from the crooked cop. This got Oresky all riled up. He then brought up evidence that could make Lino look guilty, some phone recordings of Cheris at the port. When Oresky left the interrogation room, he asked Bruno to make sure Lino didn't escape. Before too much time had passed, Bruno spotted Lino attempting to break free from the handcuffs on the table through the surveillance camera footage. This caused Bruno to panic, and he hurried over to stop Lino from escaping. After a successful scuffle with Bruno, Lino managed to exit the interrogation room. He had to face other cops at the station on his way out, but eventually made his way out. While at the port workshop, Moss arrived to find Cheris's body and his burnt car. Oresky was there too and pointed the finger at Lino for Cheris's murder. He offered to handle the case, but Moss turned down his suggestion. Oresky then went over to comfort a crying Julia. Shortly after, he talked to Marco, who was clearly upset because Oresky had implicated him in Cheris's murder case. Oresky tried to reassure Marco that his plan wouldn't get Marco into trouble. In the meantime, Julia, still feeling sad, made her way back to the headquarters with Cheris's body. While Jeff was working on untangling the car for inspection, he suddenly heard a noise coming from the back room. Curious, he went to check it out. To his surprise, Lino, who had been in the workshop, locked Jeff inside so he could take a closer look at Cheris's car. After a while, Julia headed downstairs to talk to Jeff, but she got quite a shock when Lino appeared and embraced her. He then explained what really happened with Cheris's death, but Julia, not sure if she should trust Lino, attempted to grab him. However, Lino managed to turn the tables and handcuff her. Unfortunately, Julia ended up fainting after he put her in a headlock. When she came to, Lino examined the burned car and revealed that it wasn't Cheris's car at all. He walked away, leaving Julia still handcuffed and struggling. Following the incident, Moss and other police officers arrived at the workshop to question Julia. During this time, Oresky approached Julia and assured her that he would keep their past romantic involvement a secret. Meanwhile, Lino sneaked into the port workshop to inspect some weaponry in a car. Unfortunately for him, Cad discovered his presence and aimed a gun at him. In another part of the story, Oresky attempted to prevent Moss from disbanding the Cheris team and seizing their vehicles. When he couldn't change his boss's decision, he resorted to revealing Lino and Julia's romantic relationship to Moss. Switching over to the harbor workshop, Lino appeared to be held captive by the thugs. This made Quentin, who was struggling with his feelings about his older brother, decide to rescue Lino. Quentin crashed the car he was driving into the back of the thug's car, causing Cad and the others to be thrown into the car's trunk. Once things were safe, Quentin quickly got Lino out of there. During their journey, the two brothers got into an argument, blaming each other for the mess they were in. Eventually, Quentin apologized and came up with an idea to help them evade the police's pursuit. Back at the port workshop, Oresky and Marco arrived to find Cad and Jacques in the car's trunk, surprising them. When the thugs got out of the trunk, Oresky shot Jacques, considering him unreliable, and then turned his attention to Cad. Cad tried to escape, but Marco pursued him. Eventually, Cad was caught, and he admitted to Marco that he knew where Cheris's original car storage was. Over at Cheris's team workshop, Jeff had just finished examining the car wreckage that Julia had brought in. He informed her that the car wasn't actually Cheris's, which prompted Julia to quickly inform Moss about this discovery. Despite providing evidence and information, Moss didn't seem interested in Julia's report. To make matters even more surprising, Moss brought up Julia and Lino's relationship during the conversation, leaving Julia taken aback. Back at the harbor workshop, Areski and Marco, having taken care of Cad and Jacques to remove evidence of Karis's murder, were getting ready for Moss's arrival. On the other hand, Julia received a call from Lino, asking her to meet at the spot where they first crossed paths. It didn't take long for Julia to get there. She had been at a traditional market, and without realizing it, she was being followed by 2 policemen. Quentin, aware of this, swiftly approached Julia to help her shake off the police surveillance. Once they arrived where Lino was waiting, Quentin explained the details of Charis's death and confirmed that he was a key witness to the case. Lino, who was not a suspect in Charis's murder, then presented Julia with 2 choices: either arrest him or let him go find evidence. At the port workshop, when Moss arrived to examine the bodies of Cad and Jacques, who were lifeless on the ground, Areski informed her that these 2 thugs were Lino's associates. On a different note, Julia, along with Lino and Quentin, spotted 2 policemen trailing them. In response, she handed her car over to Lino, allowing him and Quentin to quickly leave the area. Meanwhile, Areski, who was still with Moss, informed her that his team had apprehended Julia for aiding Lino's escape. In a hurry, they both headed back to the police station, while Marco stayed put in the port workshop, arming himself with a weapon. Simultaneously, Lino and Quentin reached the location where Charis's car was supposed to be stored. However, when they opened the garage, the car was nowhere to be found. Lino got frustrated when he realized Quentin's actual intention was to retrieve a bag of money from selling illegal drugs. Just as Quentin left the garage, Marco suddenly fired a shot at him. Then, Marco demanded Lino reveal the car's whereabouts. In his desperation, Lino had no choice but to confront Marco, who had a weapon. Despite being at a disadvantage, Lino managed to incapacitate Marco. Amidst the tension, gunshots echoed. Lino ventured out to search for Quentin, who had been shot earlier. Following a trail of blood, Lino eventually discovered his deceased brother near a tractor. In a different vein, Julia is undergoing an interrogation by Moss at the police station. Switching back to Lino, upon discovering Quentin's lifeless body, he stumbled upon Charis's car, hidden beneath a stack of straw near the tractor. Carefully extracting the car, Lino inspected it to find the bullet that had ended Charis's life, a crucial piece of evidence to prove his innocence. Before departing, he respectfully covered Quentin's body with a cloth. Inside the garage, Marco was still alive and unharmed, having not been shot by Lino. At the police station, Areski, who had taken Julia's cell phone, received an unexpected call from Lino. Areski asserted that Lino wouldn't be believed, given the weight of evidence against him. However, Lino had found concrete proof and signaled his success by honking Charis's car horn. He promised to show Moss the car, further agitating Areski. After ending the call, Lino promptly took Charis's car to his workshop for modifications. In the meantime, Areski and his team deliberately waited for Lino's arrival on the highway. After a while, when Lino visited a gas station, the attendant who noticed his presence promptly alerted Areski. This led the police to prepare for a chase after Lino's car. Upon realizing he was being pursued, Lino used a clever tactic. He maneuvered his modified car to get in front of the police vehicle, and then forcefully pushed the police car off the road. Areski, who witnessed this, ordered his team to open fire on Lino's car. This forced Lino to push the overturned police car forward, creating a path for himself to continue driving. Areski, determined to catch Lino, pursued him alone. On a different note, Moss had just received a report about Lino's car chase. She released Julia and invited her to join the effort to track down Lino. However, Julia hurriedly left the police station on her own, leaving Moss behind. At the very same time, Lino was still in a heated chase with Areski as they entered the city. More police vehicles joined the pursuit, causing Areski to intentionally ram into one of them out of frustration that his way was being blocked. As Areski's car drew closer to Lino's, an unexpected turn of events occurred. Julia's car suddenly appeared from behind and maneuvered to trap Lino's car, prompting Lino to hit the brakes abruptly. This resulted in an accident involving Julia's car and Oresky's. Quickly assessing the situation, Lino rushed to Julia's car to check on her before heading to Oresky's vehicle to forcibly remove the corrupt policeman. Just as Lino was about to confront Oresky, the latter threw a grenade toward Karis's car. The car exploded moments later. Despite his anger, Lino continued to confront Oresky physically, relentlessly striking him until Oresky was severely beaten. Lino then turned his attention to Karis's burning car and managed to drive it, flames and all, back to the headquarters. Upon reaching the workshop, Moss and Jeff were taken aback by Lino's arrival with the flaming car. They swiftly worked together to put out the fire and provided assistance to Lino, who had been propelled onto the windshield due to the high-speed collision. When the situation started to calm down, the police's forensic team began examining the bullet inside Karis's car. Meanwhile, Oresky covertly returned home to retrieve the money he had stored in a closet. He observed his wife and daughter playing in the backyard before swiftly leaving. In the film's conclusion, Moss signs Lino's release warrant and requests Juliet to convince Lino to continue working with the police. Back at the headquarters, Julia hands the release letter to Lino before they both walk away from the workshop together. The moral of the story is when chasing bad guys, make sure your car knows how to dance the escape tango.